Coming to you from the dining room table at East Barbary Lane, welcome to another episode of Full Circle, the podcast. I am your host, Charles Tyson Jr., and today I am delighted to be sitting with our guest, Tony Keith Jr.
Hey.
Tony is a wonderful poet, spoken word artist, hip-hop educational leader from Washington, D.C., so you know we're going to have an interesting conversation. Today we're going to be talking about Tony's collection of poems called Knucklehead, and I would really love to get into this. Tony Keith Jr., welcome to the Full Circle table.
Thank you so much, Charles. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. First of all, I love your writing style. I do.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I couldn't hear your voice because I ain't met you yet, but I could definitely hear the warmth of the author's voice in the poems.
I'm so curious. Did you find yourself speaking some of the poems out loud?
A little bit, or if not speaking, like kind of moving with it.
You were moving with it. Okay.
Yeah.
I love getting this reaction because even my mom called me yesterday. She's like, well, son, I'm reading through your book and I just came across one of my favorite poems that I've heard you, perform in public. And she goes, this is what you say? And she goes, I was saying it out loud. I had to keep myself quiet because she was like in an office environment or something. And so just the fact that the collection is sort of evoking these like reactions from people to either say them out loud or to move their body, to me, like that just brings me a lot of joy because there's a hip hop connection there. So
okay, which makes complete sense.
Yeah, if something ain't tapping, your foot ain't tapping, your head not bobbing, it's not hip hop.
I know that's right. So talk to me a little bit. First of all, the title Knucklehead. Where does that come from?
Title Knucklehead comes from, I believe, two places. One is just I really am just sort of attached to kind of really cool book titles, and I thought Knucklehead just kind of sounds great, but then I also realized that subconsciously that was just sort of me advancing language that I had heard since I was a little kid. I was always known as a little knucklehead, which the way that I understood that, it was a couple ways. In my community, it meant it was a term of endearment. It was affectionate. It was a joyful thing. Like, you're a little knucklehead. Yeah, you might have a little bit of an attitude problem, but you are sweet. You're lovable, as opposed to the traditional, narrative that, knuckleheads or black boys, even girls too, are like misunderstood or unheard, or they're stereotyped or they're judged. I was like, we got to have another way of thinking about us. And in Knucklehead, actually write, I say something about, dear Knucklehead, we don't all call ourselves, we know that we're not blasphemous, ignorant, or dangerous, although we don't call ourselves intelligent, ambitious, or courageous, right? Just sort of this idea that, like, I wanted us knuckleheads to just think about ourselves in loving ways.
Yeah, that it definitely comes as a term of endearment.
Yeah.
Like, come here, little knucklehead. Let me tell you about yourself.
Yeah, and again, I thank you for that, because I think that what I'm realizing is I'm feeling a lot more affirmed lately, because I was so concerned that the term knucklehead might be completely misinterpreted. And so a lot of readers and even just people in general, especially black and brown folks, are like, I know what a knucklehead is. I'm going to get this book to a couple knuckleheads that I know. And I'm like, okay, this language makes sense. These are the communities that I care about. Yes, this is what I wanted.
Right. So it comes to me like you talk to different kinds of knuckleheads in these poems. Like, talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, when I started, there's so much more to the story, but the first knucklehead that I'm writing to is myself. And so the world just probably needs to know that Knucklehead is a collection of poems where most of them are poems that I've been writing to myself over the last 30 years, right? And just dealing with my world as a black gay man in America. And in my very first book, How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, I sort of tell this story about how I discovered writing poetry as a way to just kind of protect and preserve myself and my sanity during times of stress and anger and confusion, and I still practice that. And so the poems in that book are essentially poems that I was writing to myself, just dealing with my world, but also reflecting on the different contexts in which I've seen black masculinity show up. And so I write about jails and prisons. I write about playgrounds. I write about what it's like to sort of play sports. I write about what it's like to fall in love. I write about education. I write about police brutality, but all these different sort of places in which I've experienced myself in my world as a black gay man in America, and then add the additional layer that I'm also gay. Right, so like there's an additional thing to it, and so that collection is me really just kind of how I wrestle with it, and then the very last part is just their poems, about being in pursuit of your passion, about I talk in the book. I use this metaphor of the very first letter is dear Knucklehead, have you ever had a planet lodged in your belly? Yes. And for me, the planet represents purpose, right? And so a part of it is just sort of like that book is also like, have you ever just felt like the world is misunderstanding you, but you got a purpose, and you might be gay. It's sort of like one of those like those things. So that's what I was aiming for with this collection, which I think I probably answered way too many things in that answer. But anyway,
there is no such thing as too many. I want it all.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I love your use of language, and I felt like this was coming from someone I knew, because hopefully when we are young, coming up, gay people, gay black people, hopefully we have a few figures in our life that are there to like help bring us up and show us the way, and your voice called to that.
Oh, I really appreciate that, because Charles, something that I think so much about is, if only I had a book like this when I was a kid.
Oh my God.
How seen, I would have like felt. And although I was reading, this is what's interesting is, I was reading Langston Hughes as a kid, but nobody was talking to me about Langston Hughes and his sexuality or his masculinity. Like no one was saying to me that, Tony, you're reading the works of queer writers, gay writers. Like I didn't know then. Right. And then, of course, I grew up in the era where I was reading, at least in college, literary works by Elin Harris.
Yes.
And so, right. So I remember like literature.
B-Boy Blues got me through some stuff.
Okay. So I'm thinking about like, I remember sort of discovering black gay queer authors, I guess, sort of in my 20s. But like, what about my like teens and middle school years? Like, where were they? And all I keep thinking about is, like right now in this moment, I'm like, I really want these young black boys, whether they're queer, gay or not, or questioning or whoever, to like, to know that they exist. Like right now, like here's a book for young adults. Like here's something written for you, specifically for you. I really wanted that. I was like, this is the book that I needed. The poems that would have been like, oh, this makes sense.
Right. Yeah, because, there's so many stereotypes that are put on us as when we're young, when we're black, when we're queer, not to mention putting all that together. And we also grow up with again, hopefully our family telling us you can do and be whatever you want to be if you put your mind to it, but at the same time the world is telling you the opposite. If you make it.
Yes, this is the thing. I love that you said that, because this is what I've continued to get more clarity about. I go to poetry for clarity. Someone said the other day, Tony, a lot of your poems about, being between things, like, between this thing and that thing, darkness and light and sadness and joy and all this other kind of stuff. And I think so much about like how for me, like poetry is trying to kind of fill that space in between. And I'm like, I'm hearing all of these narratives in the mainstream world that I am not lovable. Right? Legislation is saying that I'm not lovable. Policy is saying I'm not lovable. There's certain, I'm just like that. There's narratives that exist within religious places that say that I'm not lovable. And then there are the people in the world who I don't know who do love me, who are like, nah, you are lovable. You are a wonderful person. You do have person. And so I'm thinking about like, how do we filter out that noise? Like, how do we completely turn off the mess that we've been hearing? And so I think so much about like, I'll be 44 years old this year. And I'm like, I've got 44 years old noise that I'm still filtering through. And I'm like, oh, if I can create better noise for a kid who's 14 right now, or 13, or maybe the questioning adult, whatever. But I think like now is the time to insert more positive affirmations. Like now's the time. And so I appreciate what you just said, because I'm like, we keep hearing all this stuff about us that we're unlovable, and yet we know that we really are because people tell us.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like, and how do we find joy and optimism when
Yes.
essentially the world is basically saying, "Why are you still here?"
Yes, yes, and you probably see I wrestle with that even in Knucklehead because in this book I also write about poem. I mean, there are poems. There's a poem in there that I wrote when I was 15 years old that I slightly edited a little bit, and then there are poems that I wrote like when I was 40, right, and being married to my husband and writing about love and conflict and all this stuff because I just think I was going somewhere with some point. What was it? I get so lost in my thoughts. Oh, got it. Yeah, but the idea that, when we are absorbing this as gay, queer men, we are absorbing these negative narratives and then we meet love. We fall in love, romantic love. And you're in romantic love with someone who's also been hearing the same mess, right? That they're unlovable. And then the two of you get together and y'all trying to figure out what really loving each other looks like when the world is telling you that you can't. Right. So like even trying to figure out what love looks like between two gay married men is something that I also wrestled with in this book. Cause I'm like, I was like, I didn't have any books like this. All I had was my imagination. And honestly, it wasn't until Robert Jones Jr. wrote The Prophets. It's an incredible novel. If people don't know, essentially, it's fiction, of course, but it's about essentially gay enslaved men. And I thought to myself, like, what a wonderful story to tell. Because we only can rely on our imagination because there were no documented stories of this, at least that, written. Like, we don't
Right.
know what that experience was like. But of course there were gay and queer enslaved African, like, of course. And so for me, when I'm writing my books, I'm like, if anything, I want to awaken the imagination of the questioning of the little black boys who might be like, yo, I wonder what it's like to be in love with another man. I wonder what it's like to get married. I wonder just so they can wonder,
Yeah, that's fascinating because there's examples of drag and elements of ball culture in
Yes.
enslaved times. So yeah,
Yes.
they try to act like this shit just came out 15 years ago.
Yes.
But
No. Like, child, we have literally been around forever.
since
Right?
been.
Yeah, forever. And actually, relatedly, I even write about in my first book, How the Boogeyman Became a Poet. I reflect on.
I love that title, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Oh, I can even probably talk about that too if there's time. But
Go for it.
because How the Boogeyman Became a Poet. So first of all, to listeners and readers, it is a young adult memoir, and it's all written in verse. So every page is sort of structured like poems and formatted with stanzas and alliteration and rhyme and fun stuff. Anyway, but it's about three things. It's how did I become the first person in my family to go to college? How did I start coming out the closet as gay? And how I discovered poetry sort of as this thing that I continued doing well into my adulthood, right? And so inside this book, it's really cool because there are hand copies of, copies of the actual handwritten poems I wrote as a kid. I kept them. And so some of them are in that book. But anyway, I tell this story about how I remember growing up as a kid in the late 80s and early 90s, hearing about an uncle. I have an uncle. He passed away. In the book, I call him UT. He passed away in the early 90s. And I just remember, I say in the book how I remember him being, soft. I just remember him being a little soft, just a little, I don't know, light on his feet. I don't know how to describe it other than that. And then...
A little sweet.
And then, he dies of complications of AIDS in like the mid 90s. And that is probably, as you know, at the time, well, the height of the narrative and the epidemic, this is a gay disease. And I'm processing his death in an interesting way because I'm like, well, I don't understand how he got this thing because he wasn't gay. He's got a son. I know that he had a girlfriend. It's like, look, there was sort of this confusing. Anyway, so my point is, later on, many years later, the family begins to start discussing, and it later comes out that my uncle was indeed gay, or at least bi, but certainly he was not straight. And there's a picture that I reflect on in the book where it's in my grandmother's photo album. And it's a picture of my uncle, and he's literally kind of like hugged up with like another man in this picture. And I remember as a kid asking my family, I was like, who is that man? And all they would say, and this is gay, queer people, oh, that's your uncle's friend. And I'm doing air quotes for people. That's your uncle's friend. And you know what I mean? So I think so much about like how even the concept, all we had in our imagination was a friend. And I'm like, nah, we need something more concrete for people nowadays. But I'm like, that way I'm not hiding, I'm not my uncle, but I'm like, oh, what story he probably could have told me about what was going on with me because I was so confused. Nobody I knew was openly gay. Nobody. in the 90s that I knew was open. Nobody.
Yeah. I mean, we hadn't met yet.
Right, right. Well, I mean, at least, yeah, like literally that I knew. Or at least that was at least my age. That was like a teenager
Right.
or a
Well,
young
yeah,
person.
because you said you're 44.
Yeah, I'll be 44 this year. Yeah.
Okay, so I got just 5 years on you,
Oh, all right now. Well, hey, look
but
at you. Hmm.
but yeah, like that's when I came out, the 90s,
Oh
like in
wow.
college.
See.
So I was in
Oh
the
wow,
midst
you were
of
in college. Yeah, that I did the
yeah,
same thing. I waited until college. Yeah.
yeah, and there is that whole we're in the height of, AIDS is a very prevalent topic,
Mm-hmm.
and it permeates everything.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. It's there when you're going out. It's there when
Mm-hmm.
you're meeting someone. It's there when you know what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I was grateful to have older people that had been around that could tell me stories.
Yes.
And, think about, yeah, so many people with so many stories that never really got told because the people around them didn't have the wherewithal or the
Yeah.
courage or the knowledge
Yeah.
that they could have questions answered.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Something that I've been reflecting on a lot lately is I get invited to do a lot of like youth book events and author talks in really cool places. And I was just at the North Texas Teen Book Conference,
Oh Lord.
and there's 13 or 12,000 young people all from the state of Texas. Right, it was wild. And what I started noticing was that even a lot of the white students, I'm going to say this for a very particular reason,
Okay.
would come up to me um, and show so much love, and I'd be confused by sort of their reactions, right? Because and my point is, what I'm saying is, what I realize is I'm so openly gay and free with who I am that white kids come up to me and tell me they're gay, like they're coming out to this white kids, and then black kids too. I mean that's also, it's sort of like there's this reaction from people, and I'm trying to sort this out. And what I realize is like, oh my gosh, none of these kids have ever met an openly gay black man before. You know what I mean? Let alone a poet, let
Right.
alone an author. You know what I mean? Like they've never, and so they come up to me with sort of this like wonder, this not fascination, because I don't think it's like, in the book I write about romanticized voyeurism, like when white people look at me, that's racial microaggressions, what we could talk about later. But I think there's something to be said about like, you've just shown me something about yourself, and I even think about, last thing I'll say is, because these thoughts will connect, is last year my husband and I, we had a kid, a little black boy, come stay with us from the child family services, right? He was placed with us. He needed to be. That's, I don't know, I can't get into too much of the details, but we had essentially a kid from foster care. At
Okay.
6 years old, and it's crystal clear that he didn't understand that two black gay men were sort of taking care of him. And so the short story is, one evening he goes, "Hey, Mr. Tony, where do you live?" And I said, "Well, I live in this house." And he goes, "Oh, where do you sleep?" And I say, "Well, I sleep in the room with Mr. Harry." He goes, "Huh?" I said, "Well, yeah." He says, "Why do you do that?" And I was like, "Well, we're married." He goes, "You're married? You married to him? That's not right." And he's 6. And I said, "Yes, it is." He says, "Oh, okay." And had no questions about that, other than the next day he said, Mr. Tony, you kissed Mr. Harry before?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, okay." But you saw the way his little mind was sort of figuring something out. And I think so much about these kids who I'm meeting at these conferences, again, who they've just sort of never seen or understood a different narrative, and so I don't know, I sort of see myself in my book doing those kinds of things. It's like awakening a little bit of a possibility in someone.
Yes. And that is so necessary. It's always been necessary to have examples of, different lives, different occupations, different
Yes.
ways of being, especially now.
Yes.
Like, thank goodness you are in the literary field, because,
Yes.
providing anything in the written word is so vital now.
Yes.
And kids don't know what they don't know because so much is being taken from them and hidden from them.
Yes, yes. And you know what, relatedly too, is, and I write about this in Knucklehead, is, you know, my enslaved African ancestors weren't given access to the written word. When they needed the spoken word. Like that was literally how they figured out how to communicate with each other across languages on the slave ship. Like that's how they figured out how to decipher American Standard English. They needed the oral tradition. And so what I want to offer to listeners also is that I self-narrated both audiobooks, the audiobook for How the Boogeyman Became a Poet and Knucklehead. So you can also listen to this book. So you get it in the traditional oral tradition style because I speak it exactly how I speak. So for those of you who are interested in what my performances are like, listen to these audiobooks. And I just do a quick little flex is How the Boogeyman Became a Poet recently won an Odyssey Award from the American Library Association, which essentially means I have one of the top audiobooks for young adults in the country right now. And so these audiobooks get busy. So we've got the written and the spoken. So yeah, you're right. For me, now it's preserved. Now this is preserved. It's curated in the memory of the world at this point. There's nothing no one can do. It's art. It's written and it's spoken. Done.
Come on, Griot.
Okay.
Well, since we're in that vein, would you be so kind as to read a bit of what is one of my favorite poems?
Sure, which one?
Poetry Coming to the Rescue.
I love Poetry Coming to the Rescue.
It spoke to me as, for a couple decades and some change, I was a professional performer, choreographer, and essentially hustler. And this poem spoke to the soul of that.
Oh, wow. Thank you. This is one of my favorite poems, and the listeners should know that typically when I do have like a spoken word poetry feature, I usually open with this. This is usually like my opening poem. I wrote this, though, in 2005 or 2006. And listeners should also know that the in this book are also illustrations. The illustrations were created by an artist, Julian Aiden Alexander, who read the book and created his illustrations on his own. So there's a picture in this book of a little poet superhero with a cape. You gotta see this. I'll read some. It says, "Poetry coming to the rescue. You can save someone from drowning. And my daddy, who is a minister, says, son, if your sermon is good, you can save someone's soul. Well, I've never really been the kind of person to ask for help, but if I needed some saving, trust me, you would know. But I wouldn't be sending out an SOS message or interrupting your regularly scheduled programs. I wouldn't be sending it in an email, a text, a DM, or posting anything on Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, or Instagram. Instead, you'd find me on a stage, usually with a piece of paper in my left and a pen in my right. My mouth would be wide open and a vein poking out of my neck. My eyes would be shut tight as I focus on every single breath, just to make sure that my lungs have enough capacity to create words that defy the laws of gravity and that swirl up into a vortex of knowledge, causing supernatural catastrophes. And while my poem ain't no tragedy, there just might be some casualties if you're not prepared to battle me." You want me to keep going?
Oh, yeah.
But if you're feeling froggy, then jump. Because my poems are not for tricks and they certainly aren't for chumps. I do this for a reason. I write this for those of you with terminal diseases. I write this for those of you who want to have sex but your parents are preachers. I write this for those of you who want to learn but you lack loving mentors and teachers. I write this for those of you who love your mama but all she does is scream at you. I write this for those of you who love your daddy although his eyes have never seen you. I write this for those of you who miss getting a good night's sleep after hearing your grandma sing a sweet song to you. I write this for those of you with negative energy and so like a magnet, bullshit just clings to you. I write this for you. I write this for those of you whose sexuality is unacceptable until it's received some societal stamp of approval. I write this for those of you who work so hard to create change, you get frustrated but you still maintain. I write this for those of you who don't have answers, yet one is always being forced from you. I've learned that sometimes saying I don't know is a lie, and that sometimes saying I don't know is the truth. I write this for those of you who want to earn love but don't know that it's already been given to you. I write this for you. Been battling poetry until my ink bleeds black and blue. I'm just a superhero with a cape made of metaphors, trying to use my words to simply save you. And yes, some of the words in my poems do rhyme, but I've been doing it for a while, so it just happens sometimes. And yes, memorizing a poem would make any performance good. But if I could, I would pick up this book and read my words just to make sure that my messages are never misunderstood. I do this for a reason, and this gift is not temporary. It does not change with the seasons, which means I can spit fire while the sky is hot, or I can cool it down while the water is freezing. And if words having power isn't something that you believe in, then I can spit on my fingertips, reach out my palms, and turn these written words on pages into a spoken altar call, and I can start saving all of you heathens. Because I care about your futures. I care about your destinies. I care about your legacies, and I want y'all to know my name. I want y'all to look up in the sky and scream out. And if this was an open mic, I'd say, "Is that a bird?" And they would say, "Is that a bird?" And I'd say, "Is that a plane?" They say, "Is that a plane?" And I'd be flying by shouting, "No, it is poetry, and I'm a poet, a social agent of change, piecing letters to words and words to sentences and sentences to sounds. I can leap over metaphors with a single bound. I am powerful enough to spark protests for equality in ghetto communities. Talk slicker than silly politicians, creating policies that grant rich folks immunities. See, I didn't choose to be saved by poetry. Poetry chose me. Poetry crept up inside my mama's womb, and poetry started tickling me. I've been speaking in rhythmic patterns since I was in grade 3. I'll just continue till I'm through. So who am I? Well, I'm just a simple superhero with a cape made of metaphors, trying to use my words to save you. Poem. Thank you. Also, quick thing for listeners, y'all should also know I mentioned, I've been speaking in rhythmic patterns since I was in grade 3, and how the boogeyman became a poet. I write the story about how I wrote my first poem in 3rd grade and emceed it at a school event. So since grade 3. So the two books are in conversation. They're little nuggets that kind of go on both, but yeah.
Which answers a question I was going to ask. How did you approach writing and being a writer? Since grade 3, wow.
Yeah, since grade 3. And I don't know how much time we have, but I'd be happy to even sort of the way that these books came about. I'll try to make it really, really short, but I'm good. Oh, okay, cool. So what had happened was, this is the truth. Spring 2019, I get laid off from my full-time youth development nonprofit job in Washington, D.C., doing work in D.C. high schools while also working on my dissertation. And my husband, who I had just got married to a year before, he had just got laid off from his job too. And this was like, we were living in this tiny little 2-bedroom apartment in Northeast Washington, D.C. And the only way that I knew how to make money was on the side. I was always performing poems or featuring some way, or I was gigging, if that makes sense, and gigging and also doing some kind of consulting. I do work in it's funny because I have to now say I can't say DEI anymore, but that's kind of the world that I was in. And anyway, I was in that world.
You can say it whenever you want.
Well, that's right. You're right. Damn right. I was in that world. I was in that belonging, equity, and shit in education, right? And so I'm in that space. And so I just kind of go heavy on doing that. And I start writing grants and fellowships. And I just figure out a way to survive 2019 on just the poems. And thankfully, my husband found a job later that fall, and I defended my dissertation successfully that fall. But I entered a job market in Washington, D.C., and no one wanted to hire someone like me. My PhD is in education leadership, and I focus on hip hop and spoken word and poets who do work in education. And anyway, there was just no place that was looking for someone with my particular kind of skill set. And so I'm like, well, whatever. I'm just going to.
Are you saying positive Black people aren't marketable? Is that what you're trying to say?
Okay. I'm just like, academia is just like, dude, you move in a weird way, because although my PhD is in education, the world should know I've never been a traditional classroom teacher ever. I've never been taught in K through 12. I've done college courses, but I've always been nonprofit, community spaces, after school programs. I always moved in that space as an educational leader. And so I knew that I wasn't the only one. So that's what my dissertation is all about. So I entered this world with this PhD, and I don't want to be a principal. I don't want to be a superintendent. I don't want to be a chancellor of schools. I want to run
a bureaucrat.
I don't want to do that. And so, and I also am not fully sure I want to be a full-time assistant professor. So anyway, I go heavy with applying for jobs, and right now poetry is paying the way. And so in February of 2020, I'm at the University of South Carolina, Charlotte. I keep saying that. I'm at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina. Okay. And I'm there for a writer's retreat for some young people with my friend and fellow author Jason Reynolds. So the world would certainly know the name Jason Reynolds if you're into young adult literature. He is a beast to be reckoned with. But also one of my very dear friends. Love him very much. Anyway, 2020, and he's talking about his life as a young adult writer. So being someone who writes on the page, he's also a poet on the page, but I am a poet on the stage. I'm performing. So we're talking about our careers in that regard. And after every event, there was always a book signing for Jason. And because he's got tons of books. And I'm used to sitting at this table with Jay, and he's my friend, so it's nothing. And I'm in my phone, just doing nothing, typing something. And this little black boy gets out of Jason's line with this black woman. And they walk right up to me, and this little boy says, "Mr. Tony, where's your book?" And I was like, "Book? I don't have a book." And this is 2019. I don't have a 2020. I mean, like I don't have a book. I don't write books. I write academic papers. I publish on the page. I say something silly, and he sort of looked a little disappointed and was like, "Okay." And I think that his mom or the lady he was with might have said something like, "Well, let us know when you write one." And I remember going back to my hotel room that night, like, what? What in the world are they talking about? And I decided in that moment, I was like, I'm going to write a young adult version of my dissertation. I'm going to translate this big old academic thing, and I'm gonna write this thing. Yeah. And I get so excited about this, right? I put 500 words down on the page that night, and I go tell Jason the next morning, I'm like, "Yo, Jay, I think I'm gonna write a book, bruh." And he's like, "Okay, Tony, sure." And I'm like, "Serious, I think I'm gonna write a book." So we fly back to Washington, D.C., and then March 2020 hits, and COVID. Mm-hmm. Boom. So education landscape changes, the art space changed, like everything changed. My economic reality changed significantly. Right? I was like, oh my gosh. And so that's when I was like, yo, the only thing that I know I might be able to do to get some money down the line is I gotta probably work on seriously publishing this book. So I'm writing for more grants, and I decide to write this book. So I write this manuscript that I think is a young adult version of my dissertation. And I learned that what I got to do is get a literary agent, and I learned how to query a literary agent, and I got an agent within like 2 months, which apparently is unheard of in the industry. Really? I got a literary agent very, very fast. And so I got someone willing to represent me, but she said, this is how I'm going to connect the dots. "Tony, the thing that you are writing is not a young adult version of your dissertation. The thing that you are writing is there's something you want to tell a story about yourself, about you being this little gay black boy." Because apparently I didn't realize, but I had woven that narrative into what I thought was my young adult book. Like I was somehow embedding the story about me in the story about my dissertation. I don't know why, but my brain was doing that. So she helped me tease all that stuff out. And what came out, of course, was how the boogeyman became a poet. And so what happened was, so while I'm trying to figure out how to write how the boogeyman became a poet, I'm also still writing poetry. And so my agent, after about a year and a half of working with her, she was like, "Tony, look, it's been a while. It seems like you're still trying to figure out this memoir thing you want to write. Why don't we just go with a poetry collection? Publishers in the young adult space don't really, buy poetry collections, but, we can just get your feet wet. We'll see." I say, okay. So I put together the collection Knucklehead. I was like, I got these poems that I've been writing to myself over the last couple of years. We can go with this. She goes, okay, but in my book proposal, I say I'm also working on this memoir, and I think it's going to be a memoir written in verse called How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, and I'll tell you about that title in a second. And so we send this out to publishers. Publishers then write back sort of quickly, and they're like, wait a minute, this Knucklehead collection is interesting, but what is this memoir thing? What is that? Right? And so my agent was like, "Tony, how fast can you try to put something together?" And I think I locked myself in my office for 3 days straight and just wrote as much as I possibly could. And I think I got like the first 30 to 40 pages or something out of something that I thought would be the memoir, How the Boogeyman Became a Poet. And HarperCollins bought both. And they said, "But Tony, the publishing world does not know you. Your memoir needs to come first.
Right, yeah.
And then your poetry collection." And I'm so glad it worked out that way, because after I wrote How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, I then realized how I wanted to format Knucklehead. So listeners should know that Knucklehead is not a traditional poetry collection in the sense that there's not a table of contents. And it's not like there's like a themed section. It's not like, oh, I want to read the love poems. Let me go to... I mean, it kind of is that way, but not really. It's something that it's designed for you to read cover to cover. So the titles of the poems sort of are like transitions in the story of the poems, if that makes sense. Yes. And How the Boogeyman Became a Poet flows the same exact way. The titles in the book flow as transitions throughout the entire book. And so that's sort of like my writing style. And the last thing I want to share, because I think this is all important in this story. Because this is how I knew I was going to be a writer and how it's going to be connected with the poem. Is also in 2019 to 2020, when all this turbulence is going on, I'm enrolled in therapy. Okay, here we go. I'm enrolled in therapy, and because I'm going through all kinds of things, and I write about this in Knucklehead. I'm fussing at my husband about stuff that ain't got nothing to do with him, and he's telling me like, look, I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to figure this shit out. Like, you know what I mean? Like this, okay, because I don't know what it is, but it's not me that you, whatever. And so I'm in therapy, and my therapist is like, yo, Tony, and this is talk space, so I'm typing to someone, right?
Okay.
And my therapist is like, yo, Tony, sounds to me like you have a lot of repressed anger and sadness and and you're projecting this. It seems to be probably on your partner, and so you need to figure out where this comes from. He says, didn't you tell me you were a poet? I say, yeah. He said, how long have you been writing poetry? I was like, since I was a kid. He's like, you got any kid poems? I'm like, yeah, I got tons of them. I kept them. And so what readers need to know and listeners need to know is I had a box of poems that I've been hoarding around since I was a kid. And I write about this in How the Boogeyman Became a Poet. It was blue and blah, blah, blah. But I took the lid off and I spent a weekend reading through those poems I wrote myself as a kid. Some of them made me cry. Some of them made me very angry. A couple of them I set on fire. But it became this spiritual practice because I realized that as a kid, I was using poetry to filter out the noise. I was writing stuff about what the world was telling me about myself, but then I was also writing positive things. And so what the world needs to know is that those are the hand copies poems that are in How the Boogeyman Became a Poet. And so that same process that I was using as a kid is the same process that I use now as an adult, which is how the poems in Knucklehead came to be. So that's how these things sort of flow together. And that's how I knew I was going to be a writer. It was when I realized like I was meant to be a poet. My planet in my belly is to be a poet. This is the thing, and I'm going to keep pushing with it. And readers should know the last poem in Knucklehead is about what it's like being someone whose soul living is on his poems. That's the only thing I've been doing for the last 6 years. I never got another full-time job except for the one I've created for myself.
Work. You had no choice but to be an artist.
I had no choice. It like literally, I feel like the God or the universe squeeze it out of me. It was like, look, here's your moment. And and the last thing I'll say is I'm even thinking about this right now because I wound up creating a company off of my dissertation, which wound up winning a lot of awards. It's called EdMC Academy, and we do education consulting. And a lot of us are poets, spoken word artists, rappers, and MCs. EdMCs, educational MCs, we move crowds in education, yada, 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 right? Or as we say, master conditions for student learning and engagement. Well, a lot of our work was around DEI. And so what's happening now is a lot of our contracts that I'm used to us getting have now been canceled.
Right.
And so I'm sort of back in this position back in like 2019 was like, well, bruh, what else you gonna do? You know what I mean? And I'm like, I got these books. And so the world should know, yeah, I'm thinking about writing another book. You know, because I'm like, the universe is letting me know now is the time you got to squeeze another one out of you, bruh. This is one of those moments where there's something, this is your window. And you know these conditions. Because I write a Knucklehead about how difficult it can be sometimes to be in heavy pursuit of your purpose. And like there will be all these distractions to try to convince you otherwise. And it's like, nah, I'm like, I know this territory. I've been here before. Child, Trump, child. Okay, lost a contract, child. Like I'm like, so someone called my husband a faggot not too long ago, child. Like I'm just thinking to myself like, get out the way. Just move. Because I'm...
Right. And a phrase that I have taken to heart, especially now that I work in the field of recovery, obstacles are just there to weed out the people who really mean it, who really want it. Like if you don't really want it, it's an obstacle. All right, I guess I have to stop now.
Yeah, I love that because I also write about in How the Boogeyman Became a Poet and in Knucklehead. My father dealt with addiction when I was a kid, and so he was absent for the most part. He's fine now. My father's been sober for I think 30 years. I don't even know how long at this point. An amazing man, always gives me lots of positive affirmations. But I think so much about even how I had to write poetry to sort of even understand his relationship with his addiction and his relationship with me. And so in Knucklehead, there are poems and I write about my dad and, all that kind of stuff. But I think so much about your point about just even like connecting health, mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, sort of with these positive narratives that we need. And so, but you mentioned, sobriety and addiction, I immediately thought about like, yeah, I write about that too.
Yeah.
You know?
You are what I like to refer to as an artivist.
Oh wow, I received that.
Like, just we need what you're doing.
Oh wow.
And hearing you hearing you read the one work, like you lapsed into this cadence
Yeah.
that was giving me like, if not specifically MLK,
Yeah, yeah.
like you're on a podium in front of
Yeah.
a crowd.
I really, really dig this because even within Knucklehead, there's an illustration that is a picture of Dr. King's head, and there's a poem in it that I talk about, being at a microphone, sort of like screaming out poems, just trying to, awaken people, just to the idea that we've always been liberated. Like we need to just literally wake up and realize how great and amazing we are. But I am a performer all day, and the other thing is, because you mentioned like sort of being high up in Dr. King, another dot that I want to connect is, and I've said this in several interviews, but poetry, I understand this. I really, really do now. Like it's a spiritual exercise. It really is like sometimes a download from ancestors. Sometimes it's a real thing that sort of happens, and with
Yes.
that download
Yes.
comes a rhythm sometimes. And this is why I tell people that I'm a poet, but I'm not a rapper. And don't get me wrong, most rappers are poets, or at least should be, because rap ain't nothing but poetry spoken over a time beat that must rhyme. And a lot of rappers don't know about poet. Anyway, but I'm like, yo, because for me, what comes first, like if I'm feeling heavy about a thing that I just need to write something, what comes first for me are the words. Right, I'll just like write words down, and then I'll read what I've been writing, and then there's like a natural rhythm that just kind of happens. And so each poem in Knucklehead kind of has its own rhythm and cadence. Someone was telling me the other day, there's a musicality in my poems, almost like Langston Hughes, and and I think so much about like, yeah, I'm like, I don't know where it comes from, but there is a rhythm. And so when you said that, I'm like, yeah, when I read my work. This is what's new for me is so many poems in Knucklehead are ones that turned into spoken word poems. So I'm used to performing them. And so holding the book while reading them. And even in the book, they've been edited just for more clarity for the reader. So even having to like read my book is now become a different kind of performance for me. And so to hear that, it's still resonating, that's kind of a cool experience for me because I'm used to just no book on a mic just going. And so now to like have something and then to read it, it's just a different way of experiencing the work.
When you perform your work, is there ever a musical component to it?
Never a musical component, and it's actually a funny running joke. And my close friends, so I have a lot of close friends who are singers here in the Washington D.C. area, like fire singers. And whenever there's like an event, I'm always like the one featured poet. And sometimes we'll get on stage together or whatever. And so sometimes I've tried to perform with like a piano behind me or like drums behind me, and it always throws me off. And so there was one time my friends make the joke where I'd like literally turned around and told the band, I was like, can y'all just stop playing? Like
This is cute and all, but
yeah, because for me again, because it's so much about transcendence for me, I'm like, yo, y'all reckon my flow. Like let me do my thing. Now what I will say is cool is when I've not fully listened to it all the way yet, but because I self-narrated this audiobook, and HarperCollins Audio, especially with How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, they add in production and stuff.
Yeah.
And so How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, by the way, turned out I was so surprised by all the things that they did. And I've now been listening to Knucklehead. And the way that they've incorporated music in the background, the way that they've incorporated almost like typewriter sounds, they have somehow connected musicality, and I think in a really, really cool way. Something that I would not have known that I would have been able to do. But you got to check out the audiobook. It's like
it's already on my list. I still have a credit in Audible, so
yeah. And I gotta say, one of the reasons why I'm so slow to listen to it, and I was the same way with How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, is because it's just interesting to hear myself read out loud to myself stuff about myself. Like it's like such a multi-layered experience. It's like, oh wow, like this is okay, Tony, like.
How hard is it to not judge yourself?
Yeah. Because I definitely am like, I didn't say that part right, or that didn't go so well. Like and sometimes I find myself like cringing at like, I can't believe I read this poem out loud. Like, I can't believe I said, so there's this. And so I'm experiencing Knucklehead in a really interesting way where I'm like, I'm too scared to finish listening to it.
Right. But yeah, and it takes a while to learn to tolerate the sound of your own voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm so grateful to have a podcast with almost 200, well, not quite, but knocking on 200 episodes. Like,
Wow.
Okay, knocking on 150.
Hey!
But but yeah, you it takes a while to like get past, oh my God, that's me, to being able to hear yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're like me, which I think you are, when you perform, you say and do things on stage that you would never do.
Yes, otherwise. For sure. And because it's performance for me, and so I'm like standing microphone. I'm not the kind of poet that wants like a stool. It's a sit, and I am like high energy, crazy. And sometimes there's even an improvisation, and so that's the other thing that's really interesting with Knucklehead is, I'm so used to a spoken like a live audience where there's call and response, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was so cool listening to you just do the right? Because for me, I'm like, that's what I'm used to hearing that. But when this book gets in the hands of readers, I may never hear their response,
right?
And so for me, it's an interesting thing because I'm just like, I hope, if anything, I hope they hear my call. I hope they hear my call. And if anything, and I hope they know I want to hear your response.
Right.
Or I hope you're responding, whatever that might mean. Writing in the margin or doing something.
Which, I mean, I did. So you have this passion for hip hop that filters through your work. Do you ever listen to music while you're writing?
Oh, yeah. Great way to discuss this. So for me, whenever I think about hip hop, and I say this a lot to young people and learners and listeners, in particular readers, is that I only understand hip hop to be culture. Culture meaning attitudes, philosophies, beliefs, music, food, dance, all that kind of stuff. When I was a kid, I was wearing my hat to the back and rocking baggy jeans and saying words like dope, fresh, and fly. I was absorbing culture.
Right.
Hip-hop culture's music is rap music. Right? And so I like to make that distinction because I'm like, whenever I think about hip-hop, I think about the culture of hip-hop. And it's about peace, love, unity, having fun, and joy. And when I was coming up, it was about socially conscious music and knowing who you are. And the fifth element of hip-hop is knowledge of self and all. Anyway, so I do consider myself an MC, meaning I can move a crowd, don't sleep. I'm just not a rapper. So for me, like when I think about hip-hop, and I just want to say so to people just to know that when I'm writing about hip-hop, when I'm talking about hip-hop, I'm talking about the philosophy of it. Beyond the music, but yes. But what I listen to is a hip-hop instrumentals because if I'm listening to other words, it'll throw me off. But I bob my head while I'm writing. Matter of fact, before I hopped on this interview, I was working on something and I got my hip-hop beats music instrumentals playing.
Okay.
But but I listen to a lot of non-mainstream artists people probably wouldn't, people do know about, but I listen to a lot of J.I.D. or Jid. I listen to, of course, Doechii. I listen to Lupe Fiasco, Tyler, the Creator.
Yes.
I listen to sometimes Rico Nasty. I like Rhapsody. But a lot of artists I listen to, most people probably wouldn't hear on mainstream radio, and I'm okay with that. But I'm into lyricists. I like good lyrics. I still listen to Lauryn Hill and Missy Elliott. MC Light, Queen Latifah. I'm still very much into 90s hip hop.
Sweet
Tribe
spot.
Called Quest.
Tribe Called Quest.
De La Soul.
That's the thing. Like in the 90s with hip hop, like it was cool to be black and intelligent.
Yes.
And that's what I was steeped in. And I miss that shit.
Yes. And then because the hip hop philosophy in me, I can't help it. I'm like, and then, mainstream broadcast channels and such media, the entertainment industry realizes how much money could be made when people are promoting misogyny and violence and materialism. And so let's just go ahead and sell that. And now we're going to sell this mainstream narrative that hip hop is about that. And it's not. Hip hop is not about that. Hip hop is all about community and coming together. Hip hop culture was created because black and brown kids needed an outlet to deal with racism and oppression and poverty, and gay people needed to deal with homophobia, and trans folks deal with like these things were happening. So they created poems and they performed those poems as rap music. You know what I mean? I'm like, people need to understand where it came from. My enslaved African ancestors already had rhythm and drum.
Right.
or they were enslaved. Let's be clear. Hip hop has always been about freedom and black people's joy. It's never been about shoot 'em up. It's never been about that.
Right.
You know?
And that's the thing, because like, that genre started off as, we are trapped in this environment and no one is listening to us, so I'm going to put my story to music.
Yes.
But all that was heard was gun, shoot, kill.
Yeah, and that became that's the thing. Let's do it. Let's grab it. It's funny when I listen to I go to schools and I talk to young people now. I have to explain to them that I'm like about my consumption of hip hop, because they always like, who's your favorite artist, or they want to want me to get into the debates about Kendrick and Drake, which I will engage. I love a good debate, right? But then when they ask me who some of my favorite artists are, the only ones that I know they recognize is Lauryn Hill. And sometimes I'm always wondering, what it is, but they specifically always know when I say Lauryn Hill. But when I mention others, they don't. And I tell them, I'm like, y'all got to understand that Dr. Keith is, about to be 44 years old. And I just don't listen to the same music y'all are listening to right now. And I was like, I'm officially at that age where I get to say, I say things like, I don't know what these little kids listen to me too, but I don't judge you. You know what I mean? I'm like, but I'm not judging y'all. Hip hop is always going to be a youth created culture. And so y'all are the ones moving it forward. I just want to remind you all and let you know the history of the culture, so that you also can filter out some of the noise and maybe create something that's counter. You know what I mean?
Right.
So just know that, So I'm like, I'll never judge you, but I don't know Lil Yachty. I don't know Lil Baby. I don't know
all the babies and the Lils and the Youngs.
I can't help them. Like I don't even feel bad about it. I own it. I'm like, oh no, I don't know y'all. I don't know what you're listening to. I got nothing. I don't know.
The number of, if I had a nickel for every time I said it's just not for me.
Yeah, it's just not. I got nothing.
And I love me a good ratchet anthem every now and again.
Oh yeah. My husband listens to ratchet anthem. If I need to hear something, he is definitely into he definitely went through the whole City Girls phase, and Harry is very much into all the hood rat ratchet. You know what? Live your life, babe.
When we do a quote unquote regular episode of the podcast, we have a segment called the 15-minute fave. Mm-hmm. And the 15-minute fave is something I started years ago. It's like, this song was my favorite song on the planet for the 15 minutes I was paying attention. Yeah. And sometimes I preface it with, now this one's a little ratchet.
Yeah.
But it's so good.
We need it. But you know what, though? But I think the beauty about that, though, is I think about this, too, especially within the context of hip-hop culture and the music that we had when we were coming up, is there was just more balance, right? And there was just a little bit more balance.
Thank you.
Because I was like, yo, don't sleep. When I heard, don't you pop that Doodle Brown, what?
Right.
Like, I'm like, yeah, like, I'm getting it popping. I'm also listening to, Tupac was also, someone who wrote from sort of multiple sides of himself. So I'm thinking to myself, like, there was at least some balance. We could still party and maybe shoot them up a little bit, be ratchet, but there was also social consciousness. And I think that for me, I'm like, I just missed the balance.
Right.
And I also am so curious about the spaces in which black gay men find themselves within the context of hip hop. I think about this quite a bit. Within hip hop, I wouldn't be loved musically, but within the hip hop context of education, I'm loved greatly.
That's why I love, every now and again when Bob the Drag Queen decides that she's a rapper.
Yeah.
And that's not shade.
Yeah.
We'll give a platform to a handful of the queer rappers that are out there.
Yes.
And the song I'm thinking about in particular is Gay Bars. Uh-huh. And that's how I discovered, all the, Ocean Kelly, and these folks that are like, oh, damn.
Yeah. And who have bars.
Thank you.
And that's the thing. Because I'm like, because again, I don't want to separate MCs from rappers, because I don't want to be one of those people who draws lines in the sand about hip hop. But I do believe there's people who can absolutely write raps and can probably rap in a studio, and then there are people who can write raps if they are writing their raps, who can perform live and move a crowd, who can MC. I sort of always make a bit of these distinctions, and so for me, I would love to be, because I'm like, yo, gay people, we some of the best MCs. When you think about ballroom culture, the MC is the one who's literally moving that entire crowd, right? With the rhythm, and I'm just I have so many.
There's a young black man I follow on social media whose name is escaping me right now, and I hate it. But he's a ballroom commentator.
Yeah.
And he does videos where he'll take mainstream songs, like Broadway songs or
Yeah.
whatever, and he'll like give it the ballroom chant,
Yes.
and it's so fierce.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he did this like flow chart that took the elements of hip hop and the elements of ballroom and talked about how
Love this. I got
it's
it.
the same shit.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna send
Please,
it to you.
please do, because I'm like, I
Yes.
want to start consuming that kind of work, because I have so many questions. And also, it's interesting. I've actually never been to a ball. I would love to go to a ball. It's so funny to think that I'm a gay black man in America has never, ever, ever been to a ball.
There was like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
they
let's
were
start.
trying to get me to walk in for the House of Ebony, and I got scared.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I then became obsessed with ballroom. So
Yeah.
it's like I know it from peripherally, but never from the inside. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
this whole culture, and everything magical in the world
Yes.
comes from ballroom.
Yes.
And everyone will like try and fight tooth and nail and say that's not true.
Yeah. Absolutely. And relatedly, because I don't know how we got into this wonderful. Well, no, because you brought it up. But I'm thinking about hip hop culture, because I'm like, within hip hop culture, we have ciphers, right? Or people get in. You get in a circle and you battle, and the best one wins, right? This like that idea that we know what it's like to be in a battle. We know what it's like to battle. Like, there's something to be said about that. That is triumphant about us.
And one thing I love about gay rappers, gay male rappers in particular, is when they rap about men the way their straight counterparts rap about women.
It
I
makes
live
the
for
world
that.
so uncomfortable. It makes the world.
That's why I love it.
It makes the world so uncomfortable. There's a poem in Knucklehead where I tried to. It's funny because I do remember writing this poem, but once I started writing Knucklehead, I knew that I wanted to play on the imagery a little bit and the metaphor. But one of the last poems in Knucklehead is called "We Made It: Love." Right? So it could be read as we made love. It could also be
Right.
read as, well, we made it love. Like, there's a bunch of different things. And so within the imagery there is, two black men, me and my husband, we're floating in the skies. And then all of a sudden there's, things blowing in the breeze, and then there's a lifting of public and private parts. And then I'll give you this nugget, because I think this is a wonderful Easter egg. Because I'm a lyricist, I believe in embedding things in poems. And so there's a stanza in that poem that's called "We Made It Love." And I know, here's the thing, I know that honestly, like, very few people will get this unless I start saying this exists. Or they might. But in the I guess it'd be the third stanza in "We Made Love," I say, where our breath became verses written into the breeze, and so we hang glided across the tops of tall trees, suspending ourselves high above the bottom of sturdy bridges that were built on nothing but trust alone. In that stanza, I use verse top bottom.
What? I can't with you. Oh my god. I love that shit.
I was like, I just want to know who might catch this. I'm just so kind of curious. And also, in How the Boogeyman Became a Poet, a lot of the white teachers, the white women teachers, they're named after the Golden Girls. So there's like Miss Bourne.
And you're a Golden Girls fan too. See?
That's what I mean. Like, I just wanted to make sure that, like, in addition to writing this, but I'm like, yo, there are these little things that I just want to insert so that certain kind of readers might be like, I see what he did there.
I love that. See, you clever. You clever.
Trying to make it engaging for the readers,
Well, Dr. Tony.
Yes. This has been great.
I could sit and talk to you forever.
All
This
day.
is
But that means we have
fun.
more to converse about. There's got to be
Exactly. Oh, I've already decided this is not the last time we're going to sit and have a chit chat.
Booyah.
So, where is the best place? What's your favorite place for people to go and purchase your work?
That's a really great question. I am a huge fan of indie bookstores. This is the truth. I love them. And so I would highly recommend that if you have access to a local bookstore, feel free to stop by yours. Go to www.bookshop.org. But if you're just looking for general ways to buy my book, go to my website. Go to TonyKeefeJr.com. You click on the link for my books, and it'll take you to all your options for online retailers. We can do Barnes & Nobles. Of course, there's Amazon. And you can also get it at a lot of local public, local like neighborhood public libraries. You can get it in Kindle. It's available in audiobook. And yeah, so those are all
I love
things.
it. I love it. And where can we follow you?
You can follow me at Tony Keith Jr. on all things. Actually, I'm really only on Instagram. My Twitter, I don't use that. It's not even Twitter anymore. I ain't on X.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
Facebook is really only for like my older family members. But anyway, that's true.
Well,
I'm on Instagram for sure.
Definitely. We're going to put all of that into the notes of this episode. Tony Keith Jr., thank you so much for sitting and sharing
Thank you so
today.
much, Charles. I've had such a blast hanging out with you today. And I got another interview up next. Oh, yeah, all right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Peace. Take care.
Full Circle is a Never Scared Productions podcast, hosted by Charles Tyson Jr. and Martha Madrigal, produced and edited by Never Scared, executive produced by Charles Tyson Jr. and Martha Madrigal. Our theme and music is by the Jingleberries. All names, pictures, music, audio, and video clips are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective copyright holders.